Okay, so this is the last part of lecture 3, and in this last part we will look at how shells and some utility programs work. Okay, so we will use one shell, that's the bash shell, but you want to be aware that there are multiple shells available. So in the book you will see something about the Bourne shell. This is named after a person named Bourne, and in the book it's called SH, and it's described as being the standard shell that is the part of most Unix operating systems, usually the default shell on your system, and the usual prompt for Bourne shells is $, although you can change that. And it also talks about another kind of shell called a corn shell. That's also the name of a person, K-O-R-N, and it's not the name of the band, and this is not the name of the book either. So the corn shell is abbreviated KSH, and it's supposedly a superset of the Bourne shell because it has more commands. It has all of the commands of Bourne shell plus more. Okay. Let's just quickly switch over to our terminal, and I'm going to clear this. If you ever get a situation where there's so many things that you can't think, say clear, and it clears your mind. Okay, so right now it turns out this is running bash. Bash is the born again shell. So it was a play on words. It was a refinement of the Bourne shell, something like a second version of the Bourne shell. So it's bash is what we normally use. We can enter another shell. So in one shell we can type in some other shell. For example, let's see if KSH is here. Sure enough, there it is. So you type in KSH, you get the $ prompt. This tells you that KSH is on this system and we can run it if we want to. There's not a whole lot of reasons to do that. It's just apart from knowing that it's there. So I'm going to hit exit. I'm going to type in exit, return, and this will get me out of the corn shell back into the Bourne shell. The bash shell. There are other things. You can type CSH for the C shell and then exit from that. We're back to bash. Okay, so there are a number of different shells. I think there's also a Z shell. Oops, we don't have it installed. So there is such a thing as a Z shell, but we don't have it. Let me clear this and go back to our document. And you can read up about the corn shell and the C shell, which we just looked at. This is popular among some people. For a few years I used this quite a bit, and then I stopped. And I think I'm happy with bash. Bash is what normally comes with Ubuntu and also on Mac OS X machines. It's pretty much the standard on bash. On Mac OS X. Okay. So we will use the born again shell, bash. Most Unix system provides more than one shell, like you just saw, and Linux comes with the standard with bash. It's based on the Bourne shell, and it's the default on Linux systems and on Mac OS X. Usually you're assigned a shell when you log in, when your account is set up, and so on the live CDs, it's defaults to bash. You can change it. You can actually change the kind of shell that you use. I would stay with bash because we're going to do a lot of things with bash, and trust me, everything will just work better if you stay with bash. Okay, and like you saw, you hit exit. If you're in a shell, you hit exit and you go back to the previous shell. There's no limit to the number of levels that you can have, just the limit of memory. So In these last few pictures, you just want to get a feel for how these things are set up. There is a program called init, which is responsible for starting up terminals that you can then use to log in or just start up another terminal window. That would be the same kind of thing. Okay, so on one system, init can have multiple terminals, each of which can be logged in by a different user. So for example, David might supply his username and password and log in there. Someone else can log in here, and init sort of manages all of this. Once a user logs in, then what init says is, well, this thing that used to be there, the TTY, or the terminal program, is replaced sort of by the shell, so that when you log out, this whole thing is removed and a new terminal program starts running. Okay, that's described here. Init sets up a terminal program, you log in, you run the shell, eventually you exit or you log out, the same thing. And what happens is you go back to init and it starts up a new terminal program and someone else can log in. That's about it. I hope you have a rough idea of how shells work. I know it's a little bit different from maybe the kinds of things that you've seen. On Windows, for example, there's only one shell. There's only just the Windows command line. On Mac OS X machines, you can have multiple shells, but it's typically just Bash that's on most Mac OS X machines. Remember once again that these shells are just commands too. So you can just type in a command. Sometimes you have options, sometimes you have arguments, sometimes you have neither. That's what you're actually doing when you type something like CSH and it starts the C shell. You just typed in a command. So those shells are just another command. Okay.